Hashem, today's Daf Yomi is the Daf Yomi for Shabbos Kodesh, and we're recording this on Friday afternoon. The Daf Yomi is Avodah Zarah Lamed Aleph, Avodah Zarah 31, and the Daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim, Hatzah for the Shvuyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael, and this is Torah. We're going to start on the bottom, 30b, 2 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, Mishum Rav Yehuda and Beseira. Shalosh Yino saying there are three different levels with respect to the prohibitions of the wine of a non-Jew. The first level is Yayin Nesach, which is wine that is for sure that the idolaters used it to serve their gods, and they made a libation with it. So this is Asr Bahana. This is going to be considered something that's prohibited to have any benefit from. Umetame tuma chamura, and we're going to say that it transmits tuma at a very severe level, meaning to say, Rashi says, either through carrying it or in any way, or if you come into a tent with it, you'll become tame, like olol hames, that an offering to idolatry is compared to the tuma of a dead body. And the amount of it is because with an olive-sized amount, it will transmit the tuma. The second level of wine, on top of 31a, is dam yenam. And this is wine that is owned by the idolater, where we don't know for sure that it was used for idolatry, but nevertheless, we're going to say, asr ba'ana. You're not allowed to have benefit from it. And the first approach to understanding this is, and this, by the way, the Rambam, the Ritva writes that included in this is also any wine that we have, which a non-Jew touched, that the law is like it's wine that was owned by an idolatry. And the reason for this is because it's a decree, maybe because of Yayin Nesach, because it maybe will come to start drinking the wine that they actually did use for idolatry purposes. But the Meiri gives a different reason, and this relates to our parsha. He says that this goes back to the Bezdin of Pinchas in our Parshas Pinchas, who made a decree because he saw that they sinned with the idolatrous women after they inspired them, after they seduced the men using wine. And then in the days of the Tanoim, there was a decree. So Pinchas's Bezdin made a decree against drinking. And so then in the days of the Tanoim, where they were concerned about even more so about this type of behavior, they made a decree that you can't get any benefit from such wine as well. So therefore it's prohibited to have any benefit from it. And here we're going to say that it becomes tamei, like all other foods and liquids that become tamei from a sheretz, that the amount that it becomes tamei is with a revius, which is a quarter lug, like all liquid tamei, and it's not less, even though it's such a severe penalty. And then we have the third category of wine, and that is hamafkid yeno eitzel overcome. That's where you deposit your own wine with the idolater. Then under those circumstances, asr b'shtia, you're not allowed to drink it, but umuter bahana, you're allowed to get benefit from it. The Gemara says, but is that really the case? Excuse me, how could you have benefit if you deposit the wine with the idolater? Didn't we learn in the Mishnah in Demai that it says, hamafkid peiros of eitel kochavim, if you deposit your fruit with the idolater, then we're going to assume it's like the fruit of the idolater with respect to the sabbatical year. Maybe they're the fruits of the sabbatical year, or meiser, and we assume they're not tithed because the idolater is not going to be careful about this. And so therefore, he took the fruits as a deposit, and the Jewish, and he returned to the Jew his own fruits. And so therefore, why do we say that with the wine deposited by the idolater, you can get benefit? Maybe it was used for idolatry. So Gemara says, Karen Zavis. And we're talking about a case where the Jew put them in the idolater's house in the corner. So therefore, we're going to assume that there was a designated place, and the Jew gave, the Jew had the key, or he made a seal, and so therefore there's no concern that he switched it out. Where it says, well, if that's the case, it should be permitted to drink. So the Gemara says, and I'll prove to you that you should be able to drink it from it under these circumstances. What's the proof? Rabbi Yochanan Ikla the Parod, that Rabbi Yochanan once came to the place that was called Parod, and that's where Bar Kapara lived. And this was after the death of Bar Kapara. And Amar Kum Yesh Mishnas Bar Kapara. And Rabbi Yochanan said, does anybody here know the teachings of Bar Kapara? Tanali Rabbi Tanchum Demin Parod. So Rabbi Tanchum, who was from Parod, taught in the name of Bar Kapara, Mavkid Yeno Itza Oli Kochavim Motor B'Shtia. You're allowed to drink it under these circumstances if you deposit it with the idolater. So when Rabbi Yochanan heard this, Kariole Makom Sheipo Eitz Shamiu. Rabbi Yochanan said about Bar Kapara, the place where the tree falls, that's where it will be. Meaning to say, a place where the Taurus Karels live, that's where they are. Gemara says Shamiu, something like that. He's already dead. What do you mean he'll be there? Ella Shamiu Perusov. That's where his fruits will be. And so we see from here that Rabbi Yochanan says you can drink from wine that you deposit with the idolater. Amr Rabbi Zero Kasha. Rabbi Elazar. Rabbanan. So the Bar Kapara's position, which says you could drink from fruits that you deposit with idolater, that's the position of Rabbi Eliezer. And the other position that you cannot drink is the position of the Rabbanan. The Tanya Echad Al-Keach, Echad Al-Socher Bayis, B'Chatzer Shel Ovid Kochavim. Let's say you purchased or you rented a room or a house in the courtyard of the idolaters, Miluhu Yayin, and the one who purchased or rented the house, Miluhu Yayin, and you filled up that area with wine, and he was not able to live there. Umafteach, and he locked it up. Ocho Sambiyah Yisrael, and the key or the seal is in the hands of the Jew. Rabbi Eliezer Mati. Rabbi Eliezer allows you to drink the wine, and that's who Bar Kapara and Rabbi Yochanan hold like. But Chachamim also and Chachamim prohibited. So we see from here that it's a dispute. So how do we rule in this case? Amar Rabbi Bered Rabbi Chia Bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Rav Chisda, Amar Rav, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Ziri, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Li, Abba Bar Chama, Hachi Amar Ziri, Halachak Rabbi Eliezer, that you're allowed to drink the wine if there was a seal on it, or a key in it, or there was a key to the where it was deposited. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Hakol Mishtamar B'Chosim Echad. Everything only requires one seal, Chutz Min Hayayin, except for wine. She'em Mishtamer B'Chosim Echad. Wine is not watched with one seal. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu Yayin Mishtamer B'Chosim Echad. Even wine is watched with one. Even wine can be watched with one seal. Lo Pligi, and it's not really a dispute. Hak Rabbi Eliezer, Hak Rabbanan. That one is like Rabbi Eliezer, one is like the Rabbanan. The words Lo Pligi here don't really mean that they're not arguing. They are arguing, but they're not personally arguing. They're passing like different shitos. That's the way some understand that phrase. Alternative version is Rabbi Eliezer says everything can be washed with one seal, with the exception of wine. That it can't be washed with one seal within another seal. Even two seals won't help. Rabbi Yochanan said even wine can be watched with a seal within a seal. The Travail Rabbanan, both of them hold like the Rabbanan. Amar Savar Kipligia Rabbanan the Rebbe Lezer. One is in the position when the Rabbanan say you can't drink wine that was deposited with the idolater. That's B'Chosim Echad, that's with one seal. Although Chosim to Chosim with two seals, Sharu, the Rabbanan would say that even Rebbe Lezer would allow it. Amar Savar Fil Chosim to Chosim, Asri. And whereas Rebbe Lezer says that the Rabbanan don't allow it even with two seals. And then the Gemara says, technically speaking, and what is this case of two seals? Amarava Agna Apuma de Chavisa. So Rav Papa says, Rava says, Agna, a basin, Apuma de Chavisa, on the lip of the barrel, and Shrika, and then you put some like tar around it, the Chasima, and you seal the mud. that's avichosim into chosim. That's a seal within a seal. Below, and if you don't do that, it's not going to work. Mara says, tikua, basket that's on top of the barrel, only hadak, and also a basket that's attached, and they'll be too difficult to move. Havichosim into chosim, and that's considered a seal within a seal. If it's not attached, that's not a seal within a seal. But this node, which is like a leather flask filled with wine, bidiskaya with a leather bag, chasimas piv, and if the seal was umata below, avichosim tochosim, that's a seal within a seal. Piv umala, but if the mouth is above, well avichosim tochosim, that's not a seal within a seal. Hikaye pume lagav, that, and even if the seal was not in the bag, if after you tied the flask, you tied it underneath, that's a seal within a seal. Now the Gemara says, Tanaraban on Barishona, Ayu Omrim Yayin Shel Ein Kushi. If you have wine from the place that's called Ein Kushi, meaning to say that the Kutim were living there, and it was near a place, that's where the Kutim lived, Asar. Even though there are no idolaters, it's going to be prohibited. Why? Nimnei Biras Srika, because it's right next to the place where the idolaters are from, which is called Biras Srika, and we assume they went in there and the Kutim didn't care. Vishal Barakata, Asar, a place called Barakata is prohibited, Nimnei Kfar Parshai. Asar Nimnei Kfar Shalim. And Shal Zigdor Asar is because of Kfar Shalim. Chazal Amar, and then they changed their mind, and they said, Chavios pesuchos asuros. If you have an open barrel by the kutim, it's prohibited. But situmos, but if they were closed, mutaros, then they would be permitted. Meikara, at first they thought, my savar, ubesof my savar. First, what are they thinking? In the end, what are they thought? Meikara savar, and the first they thought, enkusi makbid amaga ove kochavim. Loshna pesuchos loshna stumas. At first they thought the kuti doesn't care about the touching of the idolater. It doesn't matter if they're close by or not. Well, besof savor, and in the end they were in the position kilo kapid when they don't care. Apsuchos, that's on the open barrels, but on the tumos, but on the closed barrels, makbid kapid, that they cared about. They cared about the closed barrels, and so therefore you could drink the closed barrels by the kutim even though they're near the idolaters. The stumos matar. So the Gemara asks, are really these closed barrels permitted? For a mini, we have a contradictory source. Or in the top of 31b, hasholeach avis shel yayim biyad kusi. Let's say you send a barrel of wine in the hand of a kusi, and they are not careful about the touching of a non-Jew, v'shel tzir. Or if it was, you send a barrel of like fish oil or fish brine, vishal morius, or if you sell cooked food that was made from fish intestines, and they mix wine with it in all these cases, biado vekochavim, imakir chos mosasano, if it's sealed, even though you send it with an idolater, mutter, it's permitted, then we'll have users. So we see from here, with respect to those cases, what's the reason? With respect to wine that's in the hands of a kusi, the concern is that the idolater touched it. With respect to the tzir, the concern is that the idolater switched it. And with the case of the Morius on the hands of the idolaters, there is a concern that he added in wine, which is cheaper than the fish brine. But anyway, we see from here that you're not going to allow wine from a kuti, even in a closed barrel, unless there's a seal on it. Or in the Bryce earlier, it said that you could buy it if it's a closed barrel. Bryce that says that stumas permitted is in the city. Everybody sees it, and where they say it's not allowed is in the derech, where you can't see what's going on. So, how do you think the barrels got to the city? Didn't they come from on the road? And so, therefore, that should also be prohibited. That the Bryce that allows you buy sealed closed barrels, that's when you bought it in the vat while they're still pressing it. Even the kuyama afkle, because everybody's going there and mirrors us. The person the kuti is going to be afraid that the idolater shouldn't touch it. And Amar Hashi Chazali Masili says if they'll see what I'm doing, I'm going to lose it all. Itmar, so it says Gemara, Mipnei Amru, Sheikh Hashal Kochavim. Why did they prohibit the beer of idolaters? So Rami Bar Chama, Rabbi Yitzchak said, Mishum Chasnas. Now, if you're going to drink the beer, might come to fraternize and you might come to marry with your children. Rav Nachman Amar Mishum Giwa. He says, no, because maybe they're not careful. They'll leave it open and a snake could bite it. So, Agiloi Demai, what are they worried about that we have to worry? If you're going to say that it's the opening of the vat, well, we also leave our vats open when we make beer. If you want to say it's the uncovering of the barrel when it's in the barrel, so the Gemara says no. We're talking about a place where they make the beer from water that was uncovered, and the water is dangerous because it was uncovered. If that's the case, Yashan Tishri, if it's old wine, if it's old beer, it should be permitted. Chanina Yashan Mutar, if it's old beer, it's permitted because Ein Aras, the Ein Manichol Yashan, the venom is not able to ferment in the old beer. So it won't allow it to ferment. And hachmetz mutter, but if it becomes vinegar, it's also permitted. Because the venom wouldn't allow it to ferment. So Gemara says, no, you're right, but we don't allow the old beer because of the new beer. So then the Gemara says, Rav Papa mafikin le'ababa chanusa v'shati. Rav Papa used to drink the beer at the entrance to the store. He would bring it to his house and drink it. And both did because to prevent fraternization. And Rav Achai was even stricter. He didn't drink it in public. He only drank it in front of his own house. He came to this place called Aragon. They brought him wine, he didn't drink it. They brought him beer, he didn't drink it. I understand why I didn't drink the wine, because he said maybe it was the Ayin Nesach, maybe they used it for their idolatry, but why aren't they drinking the beer? Says Mishum Shimtza de Shimtza. So he was concerned that if you start drinking the beer, you'll then come to drink the wine. Amarab, Hai Shefa Darama Shari. Says the beer of the Arameans is permitted. But my son Chia, I'm teaching that he should not drink. Manav Shach. Says it doesn't make sense. If it's permitted, it should be permitted to everyone. If it's prohibited, it should be prohibited to everyone. Rav Sabar. Rav was of the position Mishum Giluye, because we're concerned that it was left uncovered. But also Merura de Kashuta Kole Zahara. And the reason is that the reason why it's okay is because the bitterness of the hops will take away the venom. Udulaki malkulate fei. But if somebody who's sick or weak will drink it, it will be very hard for him. My son Chia Bri, he's vulnerable because he's sicker. Shmuel says all of the shratzim have this venom, but v'shal nachash memis, v'shal shratzim eno memis. But the snake venom is the one that kills, whereas the other shratzim it doesn't kill. So we'll stop here. This is the Daf Yomi for Shabbos Kodesh, and everybody should have a great Shabbos.